Welcome, Paul Jones. You are running for California Assembly in District 62 against Jose Solache.
Yes.
Thank you for coming this morning.
Thank you for
You are my second interview down here in LA. I believe I just ended up finishing an interview with one of your relatively close colleagues who's running here also for the state of California. And I just want to start off by talking a little bit about your personal background and history so that people can get to know you as a person, your family, where you grew up. I saw on your website that you have a little bit of a history from Tennessee and Chicago.
And Chicago, yes.
Sure.
Yeah, my parents, well, history goes all the way back, surprisingly, all the way back to Ethiopia. And somehow we ended up here. How that happened, I'm not exactly sure.
Oh, wow. That was unexpected.
Somehow, I know, but my granddaughter spent almost 3 years doing the history, all the ancestry.
All the genealogy, yeah.
It was incredible, and we ended up in Ireland, and I wasn't even aware the Irish were slaves during that period of time, but somehow we ended up here in America as Irish slaves. So it was interesting for me. But my mother was 16 when I was born. My father was 17. So they escaped from Knoxville, Tennessee, and came to the south side of Chicago, where I grew up.
Okay. And so you went to school all the way through high school, college?
No, I went to, Mom was Catholic, Dad was Baptist. So I started off in a Catholic Catholic grammar school, and then went to a public, tried to get into one of they wanted me to go into a Catholic high school. No room, so I ended up going to a public high school.
Okay. And then after all of that, I saw that you were in the U.S. Marine Corps. So go ahead and talk about your service and your history there.
There were 8 of us. Back then, I mean, we were in a tough neighborhood in the south side of Chicago, poor neighborhood. One of the biggest things I remember growing up poor is carrying cardboard around to put in the bottom of my shoes. So yeah, we came from some very poor humblings. I think that's given me a little bit more of an understanding of where we are right now, where people are literally struggling. Ended up with 7 other guys in the Marine Corps at 17. From high school, June, November, I was in the Marine Corps.
Got it. And you are a Vietnam vet.
Vietnam vet, right.
23 months in combat.
23, yeah.
Okay.
We landed in Vietnam on November 3rd, 1967, on my birthday.
Wow.
My 18th birthday. So we went from there. I got through TET, and then August of 68, I was in the right place, bad timing, so I got medevaced out, went into casual company and so on, and then turned around and volunteered and went back. So,
well, thank you for your service. I always thank our vets for their service.
Thank you.
As well as just people in uniform in general. Whenever I see a police officer, I walk up and say thank you if I can. It's very important for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I also appreciate your style. You're very well dressed. I met your lovely wife here as you were coming in. We grabbed a coffee. And I also like your bracelets here because I have a very similar style.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just an assortment of them. So we sort of match. I would assume she would appreciate this, right?
Yep, she does. When someone will say, God, you look just great. And, I have to turn around and say, my wife dresses me well.
How long have you guys been married?
We've been together 28 years, married for 25.
Okay, fantastic. And then after your service, you talked with me a little bit about this already since we're here in downtown LA, movie industry. You were a studio driver.
Yeah.
And you have in fact appeared on the set of Forrest Gump, True Lies, and The Terminator?
Oh, yes. I was minding my own business.
If I was Jose Solache, I would be worried now, especially being on the set of The Terminator. Oof.
Oh, yeah. We were at lunch, Tom Hanks, Sally Fields, myself, and of course the rest of the crew, and we were talking about my military and so on. They were short the colonel that appears in the White House scene where Tom's getting the Medal of Honor. So I was on my lunch hour after that, just kind of relaxing. Yeah. And the production assistant comes and says, Jones, they want you on set. You know, immediately when someone says they want you on set, I thought, okay, I'm in trouble. I walked onto set and Tom Hanks said, "There's your Marine." So they sent me to wardrobe, put me in a Marine Corps colonel's uniform to be in the White House scene. So that Marine in the White House scene, that's me. I think I had 2 words that disappeared, I'm sure. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to watch for that now.
Ugh.
And then I also saw that you became a computer instructor for elementary schools. So
Yes.
you actually have some background in education, which was one of your big issues that we'll get to.
Yes, I ended up going to work. I started studying all about computers, not the software part per se, but I was more involved in the hardware side of it, building them.
Okay.
So the LAUSD needed someone to come in and start setting up computer labs and teaching, instructing for that. So I was hired on this program that they had, at that time. So I built multiple computer labs for 2 different grammar schools, and then I was teaching computer skills from grades K through 5.
Got it. I remember back when I was in high school and we had gotten all of these new computers, like a big lab, the Apple IIs and various instruments, and they were mesmerizing machines even back then,
Yeah.
let alone the devices that we now have in our pockets, which are even more sinister in many ways.
Now I have to turn around and ask one of my children, one of mine, what is this?
Yeah.
Because they've just changed overnight.
I know. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and anytime Apple has a major update with its software, like the latest version, I think it was iOS 17 or 18,
Right.
She's like, "Hey, Dad, did you see all these new things that you can do?" I was like, "Oh, great. These are things that are just even like an even bigger waste of time."
Yeah. They are, and that was the amazing part. And then the program ran out, so I was with Ellie with the school district for 11 or 12 years, and the city of Carson was looking for a senior citizen instructor to teach keyboarding and Microsoft Word and so on. So I ended up teaching senior citizens for 9 years.
Wow.
That was a wonderful job.
So going total opposites, elementary school to senior citizens, the
And
whole
it was
gamut.
because I was teaching, seniors who were, most of them were retired professionals. They were teachers and they were, plant managers and all these other great people.
Yeah.
But they were in their 60s. I was the junior instructor because they were all older than even I was. So that was I would have to say that was just a wonderful experience.
Okay. And we'll probably talk about senior care and healthcare in a little bit here too, because I saw that come up on your page. We have something else in common. I saw that you ran for Congress back in 2022 for
Yes.
U.S. Congress. I just ran this cycle as an independent, wasn't able to make it through the 2-party system in the 2-person primary here. Was that your first delve into politics 2 years ago?
Yes. I had no idea what I was getting into. Not a clue. I didn't know where to go for help. I was running against Barragan, who had been, I believe at that time she was 6 years in Congress. So I was running against a very strong incumbent with a lot of money. I made it. I actually beat everyone else at the primary. I made it to the general. How, God only knows, but that was probably one of the most horrible experiences I'd had because I didn't know where to go for help. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Every wall that there could possibly be, I was running head on into because I didn't know what to do. And unfortunately, at that time, there just didn't seem to be any place to go, to learn what I was supposed to do. So
I had a similar experience. It's a very steep learning curve and on a very tight timeline. So you're trying to juggle all of these things and fundraising and outreach and with trying to get votes and being out there. Yeah, it's a difficult task. So why did you decide to run 2 years ago? What was the turning point? Was there a specific issue or just a general decline of the country and the state?
Because of my experience with education and being, working for the studios and doing everything that I had done over the years, I was gradually watching the down spiral of the state of California. I mean, every time I turned around, and even in education, I actually saw how we were starting to, even all those years ago, to start going towards the DEI and all these other things. So I did a lot of praying, to be quite honest. I mean, I didn't want to get back into this and go through the same nightmares that I had gone through before, but there was no incumbent. The incumbent, it was an open seat. Had a lot of discussions with my wife, and we sat down, and I felt that God at that point had said, okay, I want you to do this. So I finally decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm glad I have. The support that I have now is just night and day. I mean, I have great support. I have wonderful volunteers. People have given me the knowledge that I didn't have before. So as much of, the money part is pretty bad. I mean, we've gone through probably $20,000 of our retirement savings because there is no super PAC money or any of these other things. It's all by individuals. Sure. But it was, I made the decision because I didn't like what was going on. I knew in the back of my mind that it was going to be difficult, but I made it through the primary. I surpassed the other Democrat who 3 days later called me and wanted to have a meeting, which I thought, okay, what are we doing with this? Sat down in a public place, of course. Brought back my own backup, which was also my wife. And she said, I had you checked out. And I thought, okay, you had me checked out. How, I have no idea. She said, you're an honest man, which was a great compliment. She said, I'm going to endorse you.
Wow.
I am actually endorsed by a Democrat.
Wow, by the person running against you.
The person who was running against me, yes, that I
Democrat.
passed. And she turned around and endorsed me and then handed me a couple of $1,000s to get me started.
Wow.
So that was amazing.
Yeah, that's a great story. And, that's anytime, I think in general, Americans are looking for people who they do feel are honest and will do the right thing when they're in office. Instead of voting for labels this year, I'm coming across more and more people who care about the integrity of the person and the policies.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to get out in the form of these interviews, so people can see who the candidates are on a personal level and where they stand on the policies, because that's really the only thing that ends up affecting voters is what policies are put in place by your legislators. So let's get into the issues now. I saw that on your website you had a page dedicated to the top 10 worst laws that have been passed in the state just this year. Yeah. So, and you have a few of the other issues, and I'll start by going through some of the things that you seem to be focused on, then I'll bring up other issues that I didn't see as much about. So one of the issues that you brought up was crime and safety, so making it easier to release criminals, which was AB 81. And this goes along with the Prop 47.
Yes.
And so go ahead and just talk about in general about, is crime increasing or are we imagining things? And if it is increasing, what needs to be done to get it back under control?
I just like with all other things, I decided, all right, let me really get into how it all functions. So on the crime side of it, when it used to be like $50 and then it was $100, and the more that you got into it, it became a felony instead of a misdemeanor, which was a deterrent. Mm-hmm. Now we're at $1,000. They're kicking these people out, and within an hour they're already out of jail.
Yeah. So
you have Gascon, for instance, here in Los Angeles, who won't prosecute anyone. And then you have the process of defund the police. And I've done the Right or Wrong program with the Sheriff's Department. Mm-hmm. So one person will say, well, it's gone up 62%. Someone says it's gone 40%. The percentages, anything to me over 10% is high crime at this point. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I see that we can do is with 36, which takes care of 47, to bring those back down to where there's a certain cutoff, and it's not $1,000, and they're not going to just walk away. It's mandatory jail time.
Yeah. And that's very popular amongst the public. The recent polling on Prop 36 is over 70%. That's clearly getting Democrats and Republicans. We want the cities cleaned up.
Yes, because it's not everyone's affected by it. I mean, I went into a pharmacy. The individual walks in. First thing he does is he drops his pants, starts walking through the aisles, throwing things off, just wiping off shelves. And then he walks to the cooler. He's going to start taking out beer. The manager was there. I approached the manager and said, you can't let this go. He will lose his job if he has any interaction with that individual. So all he can do is stand there and watch this happen. I wouldn't stand there. I took the beer away from him and put him out the door and just turned around. I can't just be that person who just stands there and watch this go on. I won't do it. Maybe it's my military, maybe it's just I'm tired of seeing all of this continually go on and no one does anything about it.
Yeah, I think lots of people feel that way.
Yeah.
And then the only recourse that a shop owner like that has would be to call law enforcement, but in many cases they won't even show up because the law enforcement seems to be demoralized because they know that even if they arrest them, they'll be released or not prosecuted.
Well, in my discussions with the sheriff's department and LAPD also, they're operating, for instance, in my city, they cover 5 other cities of 300,000 people from a very small station. So, and they have a substation in one other city, but they have half of the force that they had before because these guys are going to other states, other cities that will offer them, a steady job, less aggravation, someone who's going to actually prosecute the crimes. So we're continually operating at a deficit with law enforcement.
Let's talk about another issue which is directly tangential to this, which is homelessness and the drug crisis in the inner cities. I just got done talking with your colleague, Mario Paz, and he said that California was spending somewhere around $33 billion per year on the homelessness problem. And a lot of these homeless people are the ones who come into the shops and do things like you just mentioned and steal things. How do we begin to address that homelessness problem? Is it tied to drug use or is it other things? And what kinds of programs or how do we begin to get these people off the street and get them help?
We really don't have a consistent program to get them off the streets. And I've taken, I've walked down Alameda, which there's a mile, almost 2 miles of nothing but tents and motorhomes where they're living. And I've discovered that they're renting these motorhomes. There are no facilities. Everything that goes on is going into the drains. But speaking to them, their prostitution, the drugs, the alcohol, there are a lot of these people who look at me and have literally said to my face, why would I want to have help? Why do I need help when no one bothers me? I can do whatever I want, and I still get paid from the state. So to me, although someone will say, well, that you're taking away their civil rights, well, they're taking my civil rights away from me because I have to contend with the fact that I'm paying for them to continue to be homeless. It comes to a point to where you're going to have to take a stand. Whether you want to come off the street or not, you're going to. We will give you the ability to get off the drugs, to get off of the alcohol. We have that capability to do that and to turn them around and have the ability to become, someone who has a job, someone who is contributing to society rather than doing on the street. But you're also going to have the ones that I have run against who have just told me point blank, I'm not interested, I don't care, I don't have to care. Those are the people that are going to have to be forced into coming off the street. Is maybe it's hard for me to say that, but I have to look at the reality.
Yeah, it sounds like your position is that for the betterment of our society as a whole, we need to address this problem and where they will voluntarily come into programs, let them do that, begin getting them off of public assistance that we're paying for, which does detract from our own quality of life. And for those who have significant problems or repeat offenders, then stricter measures need to put in place.
Because we spent 2023, the last figures that I looked at, we spent $28 billion on homelessness. It's probably more than that at this point. And what have we accomplished? Besides the fact that we're now number one, we're number one in homelessness.
Yeah.
Because they're coming here because no one is doing anything about it.
Because of the public assistance they're getting.
Because of all the public
without
assistance.
having to do anything to change their
And
lifestyle.
the NGOs are out there handing them whatever they want, you know. If you continue to enable the problem is going to continue. And the only way to stop it is this is it. This is the line, you've crossed it, it's done.
Why do you think the $28 billion or $33 billion that we're spending every year to fix this problem not only doesn't seem to be working, but seems to be making the problem worse? Homelessness continues going up every single year. Is it the allocation of the money? Is it the nonprofits that the money is being spent on?
It's both at this point. You're handing them money so they continue to be homeless, and then you have the nonprofits who are continuing to enable them to say, okay, you shouldn't do this, but you know, here's money, here's food, here's clothes, here's whatever you do. And then for me, you know, once a month, we and volunteers end up assisting homeless veterans. So every once a month we are at the VA and off of Wilshire Boulevard in West LA with clothes and food and everything else. That is what I direct my energy at also.
Sure. Okay, and then going to another issue that is again tangential to both of these, related more to your crime and safety, which is the Second Amendment and gun control. Especially here in the Los Angeles area, there are certain zip codes that have very high crime rates and a lot of gun violence. And as your colleague pointed out, we are one of the worst states when it comes to gun violence, even though we have one of the strictest gun control programs in the country. So what's your position on the Second Amendment? Just in general, I'll let you state that.
I'm constitutional carry.
Okay.
And there are a couple of my cities in the district that as the sun goes down, the crime goes up. And there are a lot of times when, I've been confronted a number of times. Fortunately, I've only had a couple of incidents that I was able to control. So I was able to pretty much walk away from. But I am, to me, the Constitution is very clear. Okay, they don't talk about, we're not talking about muskets, where in general is that people have the right to protect themselves. And I'm a big believer in it.
And all of this legislation that California is putting in place, which seems to be attempting to just make the process more expensive and more difficult, you seem to disagree strongly with. You had talked about the new cost of registration. They're trying to pass laws that will require you to basically pay $100 to $200 per year just to maintain the firearm after you purchased it. I saw that you had also talked about the new 11% excise tax that was put on all firearms.
On all firearms. I have firearms. And so do most of my children. All of us have firearms. But with being able to, and I've been in other states, in Arizona, I know one, where it is constitutional carry there. And I felt comfortable. I didn't have a problem with that. And as Mario said, if people understand that you have a weapon and you have the training, which is, to me, training is must be. You need to understand the weapon that you have. And there have been videos out there. They're very graphic, where some kid is playing with a weapon and he ends up shooting himself in the head. But I honestly believe that the only way to solve that problem is to have constitutional carry.
Okay. With training.
With training.
Okay. So let's go and do a couple of the other more specific laws. So one, you just mentioned that a lot of times children can get a hold of these and with severe consequences. And one of the laws that was just recently signed in California was a safe storage law. And I don't know the exact details of it, but I do know that it's effectively if your firearm is not on you or in safe storage and there's another individual around who's not versed with the gun, then you could be held criminally liable. So where do you draw the line to make sure that kids don't have severe consequences and mishandling something like this versus just being allowed to be free and protecting the Second Amendment?
With children, the children are going to be curious. So Mario brought part of that also, whereas I taught all my children, weapon, always, you have to respect the weapon. Assume that it's always loaded, always. If you take away the mystery, if you take away the cowboys and Indians type of things, a child is not going to bother that weapon. But then you have the other side of it where you have a child who has anger issues and things like this. Mm-hmm. That I do take the parent responsible for that. If you know that you have a child who, or a young adult who has issues or who's being bullied or being picked on or whatever that might be, you are the responsible individual who should make sure that that weapon has a lock on it to where it cannot be touched.
Okay, so leaving the authority and responsibility at the parents' level.
Parents' level.
And so then I'll ask you this: do you agree with the Trump assassin, the first attempted assassination? That individual clearly had mental health problems. The parents knew that something was wrong that day and were calling into law enforcement. And I believe the father is being held liable for the actions. So you agree that there should be some kind of responsibility or even liability with the parent if they mismanage the situation with their child?
I do. I mean, you have to take the responsibility for your child if you allow your child, and you knowingly, and this individual knew that their child had problems.
Okay.
And instead of taking that weapon and making sure, he takes him and just openly allows him to have access to that weapon.
Sure. And if you know your child has problems, instead of red flag laws, which would basically allow the government or the state to somehow monitor and red flag certain individuals that may be a danger to themselves and others, would you be in favor of that kind of intervention, or still leave that at the parent level and just put the liability on the parents and say, parents, you're liable for these kind of situations if they happen, and then leave the government out of it?
I prefer the government out of it. I haven't yet to see anywhere where the government being involved has done anything correctly. So it literally comes down to the parent.
Okay.
I don't believe in the red flag law.
Okay.
As Mario brought up, if you're going through a divorce or your neighbor's angry at you and they're going to pick up the phone and say, Paul Jones has got weapons and he's radical and he's this, and no, I don't believe in that.
Sure. Okay. Understood. Staying along the lines of children, let's now go into education and parental rights. I saw a lot of these new laws that were on your list of the top 10 worst laws in the state of California. And this, of course, originates this controversy with AB 1955, which, go ahead and explain what that is and not notifying parents in certain situations. As a parent, if you go to your school's website, your school will, every one of these schools, or the majority of the schools that I have in my district, DEI is their pronouns. Okay. That's diversity, equity and inclusion.
Inclusion, right.
Okay.
And so rather than teaching education, you're telling them it's okay to change your name or to change your sex or whatever it may be, instead of giving an education. AB 1955 taking away all the parental rights, which I will get into that if we get into my opponent, because that taking away parental rights, parents need to know, what is my child doing? Is my child having problems? And having been around teachers, I've been around some incredibly wonderful teachers, and I've also been around some teachers who just assign themselves to the DEI, to where they actually think this is a better way to go instead of teaching.
And I would guess that your position is that any kind of social issues should generally be left out of the purview of the education system and focusing solely on reading, writing, arithmetic.
I went so far as to, I contacted, when I was growing up, we had wood shop, we had, all the auto shops and everything else. Mm-hmm. To teach a child, and it's happened even in my own family, where my son, out of high school and everything else, had to come to us because he couldn't figure out, he thought because he's still, the adage of, well, I still have checks, I must have money, was his theory. Yeah. And he's got checks bouncing. Mm. Well, how do I do it? Had absolutely no idea.
Financial literacy.
Financially, literacy. I don't know how to cook. I mean, these are things that growing up, I had the opportunity. I know how to cook. I know how to sew. I can balance a checkbook. All these things that are just the basic things. Vocational, trades. Not everyone can be Einstein and a rocket scientist. You need those people in the building industry and in science and all these other things that are very important.
Yeah. And with the cooking and sewing, now you're giving me nostalgia back to my home economics class when I was in high school. I remember cooking really great things, and I made this, sewed this little bug pillow thing. I think my daughter has it now.
Yes.
So that they're useful skills. Absolutely.
They're being
even for a Vietnam vet.
In high school, when I was in high school, it was one of those things where all the cute girls, were at home ec. So it was so it was like, well,
I think I had to take it.
Oh, I volunteered for it because of all the girls were there. But then, once I was in, I was like, wow, I can cook for myself. I can do all these things on my own.
Yeah.
And even going back to understanding a trade, I went to Mercedes-Benz, just out of the clear blue sky. I went to them. Every one of Mercedes, Chevy, and a number of the other ones said, we will gladly supply the equipment. We will supply the individuals to teach these things because that's a trade. Yeah. You can walk in and make $80,000, $100,000 a year as a computer mechanic on a vehicle or a boat or a plane, whatever it may be. That is a skill.
Sure.
Welders are making $80 and $90 an hour. Another skill.
But there are definitely trades here in California where the hourly wages that you can earn are very high. Plumbing, electricians,
yes.
In the building industry especially, because lots of those manufacturing, engineering jobs have unfortunately gone overseas or out of country.
Yeah.
But yeah. Let's talk about a couple of the other bills on your top 10 list that you brought up. One of them was about stripping school boards of curriculum powers. Elected officials approved AB 1078, saying that it was designed to stop book banning in California's schools, and it will serve as a local control over curriculum and seriously limit parents' rights to have a say in what is taught in schools. So it seems like a lot of people claim that the names of the bills and the way that they draft them are deceiving to voters, and they sound good, but in actuality and in the way they're put into practice, they're not.
Exactly. The language that is used in writing, and as legislators write them, what are they? Legalese, I guess, is what they're basically calling it. Most people don't understand all of this, so they're not going to be able to say, oh, wait a minute, this bill is not right, because they throw so many different verbiages in there that you really don't know what it is, and then suddenly it's too late.
Sure. So what was this book banning bill about then?
Well, for instance, I did some book investigation on it, and one of the books that I pulled out was You Can Do Anything. Well, yeah, you can, which had to do with Johnny is 10 and this girl is 10 and they want to, you can do anything because you can pull, you can get an erection and you can do all that. But the book itself was very deceiving until you open the cover.
Okay.
So when they talk about banning books, those are the books that I want banned out of school. They don't need to be there. They shouldn't be there.
Okay.
They have no reason to be teaching a child 10 years old. If you're telling me that a child can't think for themselves, whatever it may be, up until a certain age, then why are you going to give a child who is who's curious, who is who's going to look at this and say, well, really? You know, very curious. No, it doesn't belong.
Sure. What about an issue that is coming up more and more, which relates to transgender and specifically in bathroom areas and locker rooms, and allowing transgender men, women to be with the opposite biological sex?
I've had one experience so far with a transgender reaching, you know, you're in a grocery store and you're not really paying attention. You're reaching for the handle on the door for a cooler, and someone else is reaching at the same time. You know, hairy arm. It's like, sorry, man. I don't know if I said sorry, dude, or whatever it was, and turned around and said, I'm a woman, and it didn't go well from there because I simply said, no, you're not. You are male. And he said, I'm not a man. I said, no. And I know it was for me, maybe it's because of who I am, but I don't tolerate it per se, because I said, no, I will never accuse you of being a man, but you are male. You were born a male. I don't care what you do. And I turned around and there was women, and I said, here's a woman, here's a woman, here's a woman, here's a man. You are mentally disturbed. You're ill. You need to seek help. And I said, we're done. And I tried to walk away. I've found that they get, and I've seen it more than once, to where they become very aggressive. You will call me a woman. No, I will not. So we'll just say it didn't go well.
Yeah, I understand. Very strong stance on that issue.
I do.
And we'll let the voters decide for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one was eliminating discipline in schools, which was SB 274. You say that they are basically banning suspensions of students who engage in willful defiance. I'm guessing your position is that allowing this kind of bad behavior will disrupt the experience for good students in the schools.
It will, and you know, having been, I've seen it when I was, you know, when I was an instructor teaching grades K through 5, and you have, you know, you're going into a classroom to, you know, to take care of a computer that's not functioning or whatever it may be, and seeing, you know, a sixth grader standing up on top of a desk disrupting the entire class, and the teacher's going, you know, you really can't do that. You know, you need to sit down. They should have been removed, suspended, done. You know, have school police come in and escort that child, call the parents, your child is doing this. But there's another side of that, because I have done that. I've taken a child out of a classroom where I was at, where I had to work on a computer and it happened to be on that particular desk, and they're throwing things, and the child was removed, taken. But the parent comes in and says, not my child. My child wouldn't do that. I'm sorry, yes, your child did do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's frustrating because you don't know which way to go on that.
Sure. It seems like in general there's a lot of handcuffs being put on teachers. They're not allowed to tell parents if there's a gender identity issue, even if they would want to with AB 1955. They're not allowed to properly discipline students.
Correct.
When you're out talking to teachers and members of the CTA, are you seeing any change in sentiment? Do they feel like the state is putting laws in place that are empowering them and allowing them to control their classroom?
From what I've seen,
because they've been very strong supporters of the Democrat Party for a very long time, and I'm just curious because I don't know.
Well, for instance, we're losing a lot of the good teachers because there are many times which I wasn't aware of until, you know, a number of years ago. Whereas the district hands down, this is your curriculum, this is what you're going to teach, this is how you're going to do it. Teachers who turn around and say, wait, that is not going to help my class. It doesn't really apply to my students. If they change the curriculum and they want to teach, they want to give an education, they're told, no, you're not. So it's not always just the teacher, it's actually the school district itself because they're the ones who are authorizing the bad behavior. They're authorizing, telling the teacher, you will teach this way, this, and that's it, or you will lose your job. And I've had teachers who did lose their job over that.
Interesting. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and start talking about financial policy. And one of the issues that did come up a lot when I was running was taxes and property taxes. And you write about repealing Prop 13 and raising taxes, which I guess was ACA 1 and ACA 13, saying that basically these propositions that are now on the ballot will make it easier to raise your property taxes by lowering the threshold to just 55%. So go ahead and talk about what you believe the Democrat legislature is up to now, apparently behind voters' backs.
It is behind voters' backs because they word it in such a way because it kind of lulls you into thinking, okay, well, maybe the way that it's worded, you're not going to remove, you're going to hold that, for instance, whereas if your parents pass away and you inherit the house, the state wants to come in and say, okay, we're going to assess this house for these taxes, all these back taxes, to a point to where you are going to have to pay more taxes on that house that your parents have left you as an inheritance. So you're taxing the inheritance, you're taxing the home, you're raising the interest rates, and all the taxes are just seem to be compounded higher and higher and higher on every time a house is turned over. Then they're using the maneuvers that, and I'm still trying to get a complete handle on it because it is there's so much coming down so quickly, and the way that it's worded, that it becomes confusing even for me. And I sit and try to read these things and try to break it down. And even spending the hours that I've spent, it still becomes part of it's kind of a mystery of how they're figuring out the formulas and how I'm going to tax you for your home. I'm going to take this away from you if you don't pay these taxes. But then you have the other side of it where we talk about the ADUs and what's going on right now with the state of California, allowing, it's a method of taking away that Prop 13 where you reach a certain age or you had that home for that period of time, you have a certain tax bracket that you're paying, you pass away, it's gone.
Yeah. So it seems like you're basically saying it's a way of the state government to take advantage of California's increasing real estate prices, which have greatly benefited a lot of Californians, at least the small group of people who are homeowners, which is becoming less and less now. And now they're going after that to not allow that to continue. Exactly.
And what they're, for instance, the house just a couple of doors down from me, the gentleman passed away, he had no family. It goes into probate court for a period of, I think it was 4 years. The house was built in 1942, no upgrades. The floors are rotting. I mean, I kind of watched over the house for like 3 or 4 years when it was just empty. It sold for $755,000. The interest rates are such that you're going to pay taxes on that $755,000. A single family cannot afford that. So it turns out into an investor who has decided now, and we're going like this, butting heads over it, because they want to put 2 units in the back, take the garage, convert that. So suddenly you have the state's going to collect all these taxes because they're going to tax the house, they're going to tax the ADUs, they're going to tax. So it's taxes upon taxes upon taxes. When do you stop this? I mean, cities have their own, building codes, and the state comes in and circumvents all of it. So they're just the taxes upon taxes upon taxes.
And in the scenario you just described, would you say that the law is being set up to favor real estate investors who are going to come in and buy up these single-family homes and then build out ADUs and multiple units and put more people in, because that would seem to be effectively the only way that you could afford to pay the taxes on properties like this.
Correct. So that, even though they're going to pay taxes on the house, so they're going to charge, it's going to be a $2,000 a month rent for that house, and then you have an ADU, that's going to be $2,000. You have the one on top of that, that's $2,000. They're collecting $10,000 to $12,000 a month in rent to pay the taxes, which leaves, how can you afford that? You have all the cost of your food. It's astronomical in the cost. Our sons had to come home. Both of them are working full time, but they can't afford $2,500 a month for rent for a studio or a one-bedroom house.
Yeah, that's $30,000 a year after tax money.
Yes.
So you have to have just a $60,000 salary dedicated to just paying rent.
Just paying rent. We've literally eliminated our younger population of being a homeowner. I mean, I've owned my home for 25 years. And the houses around me, I can't afford to buy my own home. I couldn't afford it, whether in taxes or anything else. I'm a disabled vet, so I get a discount on my property taxes, but my property taxes are still over $3,000 a year. And this is after 25 years, it just continues to go up every single year. I mean, even for me, I'm struggling to make sure that my property taxes are paid, because the state will walk in and grab that house in a heartbeat.
Sure. In addition to property taxes, we'll continue going with this cost of living and inflation crisis. What are some of the other factors do you believe the state of California is doing? Some of the other things that have come up in prior interviews are energy costs, the cost of just spending on various programs. What are your other thoughts on the ways that we can get this cost of living crisis under control? Because especially here in California, it's becoming untenable. And we just talked about how 700,000 people left the state last year. Gavin Newsom would claim that, but there are more people coming here. But then other people would say, well, there's a certain demographic that's leaving and a certain demographic that's coming in, and the ones that are leaving were the biggest contributors to the state.
The contributors, the folks who were really keeping the state afloat, those are the people who are moving, and the people that you have coming in are low-income individuals who have to have that support. So our taxes are going in to help that level, and you have families that are 2 and 3 families living in a one-bedroom apartment. The social part of all of this, and I'm trying to find the words to make sure that I am accurate. We have social programs. Those programs were never meant to be ongoing. Those social programs were put into place in the state of California to give you a hand up, not a handout.
In a crisis situation.
In a crisis situation, but we've continued that. Even with all the illegals coming in. I mean, there are families who are struggling while they're watching someone else walk into the state of California illegally, and they're making more money than they are and doing nothing. And they want the same opportunities that everyone else has. So we're actually creating a situation to where California continues to go down into that endless pit of not having the same type of living that we had before. We're literally destroying ourselves.
We're on an unsustainable path.
Unsustainable path.
And staying along the lines of illegal immigration, we'll come back to the cost of living. I have a couple more questions, but we'll jump into that because one of the other 10 worst laws that you wrote was giving free lawyers to illegal immigrants. You said they allocated $60 million so that illegal immigrants could fight deportation in the state.
That was something else that's frustrated. I've been on the border, and I've watched it. I spent a week on the border. These lawyers come in and give them all this advice. They are basically teaching these individuals how to beat the system itself. Whereas if you do this or you say this, you're going to get this, the state will give you this. So these attorneys that we're paying for are helping them get everything that other folks don't have. We're paying for it.
I would guess your position on the other two programs that a lot of Californians seem to have problems with are paying for health insurance for illegal immigrants, and then the bill that made it all the way up to Gavin Newsom's desk about allowing illegal immigrants to apply for up to $150,000 for the down payment on a home. It was vetoed, of course, but I feel like if that had gone through, there would have been a lot of outrage about that.
Well, the $150,000, for instance, that bill's not dead.
Okay.
What California does that I've discovered to my headache is that they
After reading lots of bills.
Yeah, well, they sit in this, it's kind of a little void that they've created. So we can't get that passed right now, but we'll just kind of set it over here where the folks won't know about it. But the moment that we think we can get that bill through, we're going to do that.
It's like, oh, the runway is a little bit too turbulent right now, so we're just going to go into a holding pattern for a little while.
That's all it is. That bill is not dead. That bill is still sitting there.
Okay.
So that's what Gavin Newsom is doing. I mean, my wife gave him the new name of Gavin Newscom, which I see that Trump picked up. I sent it to him on Truth Social.
She coined that before him?
She coined that. Well, I sent it to him on Truth Social, and suddenly here it is. He's saying it. It's like, my wife did that. That's pretty good.
Wow, okay. Your wife is doing sneaky things behind the scenes.
Oh, yes.
I mean, your dress coordination and now Trump's new term for Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom.
I had no idea.
But people don't understand that these bills don't really die. They set them, it's so complex to get through all of these. You have to break down one wall to find out, oh, well, it's here, but no, they moved it over here, or they put it over here to where you don't know it's there. Yeah. And then, as you said, once the turbulence kind of settles, we'll just kind of sneak it in here.
Sure.
So they're not dead.
Interesting. Let's go a little bit back to cost of living, but more from an energy standpoint, because California has very strict and short timeline green energy mandates that have been put into place regarding electric vehicles, electric appliances. And I've heard from a lot of candidates on the Republican side that these are driving up the cost of living, because when you raise the cost of energy, it raises the cost of everything. So go ahead and give your take on some of these green tech mandates, and do we have the infrastructure? Should they be pushed at this rate?
Well, all right, you know that next year, which is what, 6 months from now, but less than that, I mean, we're October already. So starting in 2025, the mandate from Gavin Newsom is that 35% of all new vehicle sales must be electric. Okay. According to I just took Southern California Edison because that's who I pay my bills to.
Sure.
Have said point blank, we do not have the structure, the grid to be able to support that. They don't see this coming until 2050. So how can you mandate something that is so illogical because you're trying to do the impossible? And electric vehicles don't pay fuel tax. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we collected $2.2 billion in fuel tax last year. Mm-hmm. Electric cars pay a fee when you purchase that electric car, but that's it. So what's going to happen is when the electric cars continue to be pushed, and the funds for the silly things like trying to fill potholes, which is, as you know, is a joke, especially on your vehicle with your suspension, it's not being done. Yeah. So there's another question, where's that money going to, number one, but back to that, the grid won't support it. What did Gavin Newsom say during all this last heat? Don't plug in your electric vehicle. The grid won't take it. Mm. We're sitting there, even the other night, we're sitting there and all of a sudden the power's gone. Yeah. Brownouts. And it's a constant thing because we don't have the facility. There is a charging station in one of the cities in my area. Just about 3 blocks away in a facility, there are diesel generators running. And I had to go investigate it myself because someone said that because and looking at these charging stations, there's nothing there to support those charging stations. And then the more that I thought about it, I thought, okay, well, where's the power? Well,
They're using diesel generators
They're
to
using
generate
diesel
the electricity for the electric charging stations
Exactly.
for cars. Okay.
It's actually piped into there.
Yeah.
And
Unforeseen consequences of electrical mandates.
But
Costly ones.
But they hide these things, and because they're hiding them, people don't. They say, well, it's good for. No, it's not good for the environment.
Yeah.
The process for the batteries. I discovered there's 180 some odd ridiculous amount of circuitry going into an electric vehicle. 1 or 2 go bad, you're sitting there in a car that's going absolutely nowhere. Mm-hmm. And how many times have you gone down the freeway, the weather's not good, and they're sitting on the side of the road because water's gotten into them or the heat has gotten to them, and they're sitting there either in flames or they're sitting there with some other major problems.
Sure. I will say that the technology will eventually come around. Comparing the quality of electric vehicles and the range of what they were when they first came out to now is a very significant good improvement. And I would say leaving it to private industry, Tesla's done a pretty good job of figuring out and expanding the charging station so most people can get to where they want to go in a reasonable amount of time. But you're definitely against putting in these government mandates and let the private market take care of it and let people choose for themselves.
That is where I'm at. Private industry is great. Private industry figures it out because they're not going to put themselves in a situation where they're either going to lose money or they're going to end up liable for something that they should have had knowledge of, and the car catches fire, someone dies, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. The government, I don't care. Just as long as I have money coming in to fund, whatever government program I want to run past the taxpayer.
Yeah. Going back to the point you made about since we are switching over to electric vehicles, we're not collecting as much gas tax, and now we're having a difficult time supporting the transportation infrastructure because of that. I saw a pilot program they were starting where they were possibly considering requiring all vehicles to have effectively GPS monitors in them, so they could track the number of miles that they drive and then assess a surcharge based on that.
Exactly.
So I would assume that your take on this would be that's another government program to fix a government program.
That failed.
Yeah.
So, the more you continue to put in these government programs, so, okay, well, this one failed, so let me get another government program to cover what I made the mistakes on this one and cost.
Yeah.
It's control. It's all about control. The government wants to control everything you do. Mm-hmm. Whether it's where you're located, where your car is going, how I'm going to charge you X number of miles, and they're talking about even doing this with fossil fuel vehicles. So you're going to charge taxes per mile on every single vehicle. For what reason? Where's the money going to going? Mm-hmm. They don't. It's like, well, we have to have this, or we have no. Yeah. It's not going to work.
What about instead of having GPS trackers, which knows where you are every second when you're in your car, just toll lanes? Because that's kind of a way of assessing charges based on how far you drive, but isn't as intrusive.
That is intrusive to me. I GPS. That's how I got here. Mm-hmm. Put it into the dash, and okay, it tells me, okay, I'm going to take this rate. I'm all for it. Mm-hmm. But when you start telling me you want to track me, physically track where I'm at, how many miles I drive, where did I park, when did I leave? No, because you can't convince me that not only are you going to charge me mileage, but you're going to know every single place I've been. Mm-hmm. That's beyond being intrusive.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about government intrusion into the healthcare system, because this was another of the 10 laws that you brought up. You wrote Advancing Government-Run Healthcare, AB 770, which instructs state officials to begin negotiations to obtain federal waiver to redirect all federal healthcare funds to support government-run healthcare system costing $500 billion annually. That's kind of a lot of verbiage. So just go ahead and try to talk plainly about what you believe they're trying to do and why it shouldn't be that way.
All right, I have health insurance. You have health insurance. Okay, you need health insurance. But when the government wants to continue with the program of, and I hate to bring it up again, but the illegals who are coming in, those people who have no insurance, nothing, they want to pay for them, but you're going to pay the government to pay for them. So you continue, it's an ongoing, never-ending free medical for everyone else but the people who are paying for it. So they're going to end up with less coverage because their money's going to someone else. I mean, as a disabled vet, for instance, I can go to the VA. Okay, well, that's great. But the healthcare there isn't terrific either. So the money just keeps coming in and coming in and coming in, and we're going to give you health coverage that is horrible. Pre-existing, okay, I believe that should be covered because you can't differentiate between, okay, I became ill, but it can't be, you can't cover everyone and expect those of us who are paying taxes to continue paying for free medical health. It's nothing more than a vicious circle. There is no reason to just pay for everyone. You can't pay for it. It's impossible. But they're doing it.
Yeah. It sounds like your philosophy is generally that the government is creating programs that are taking more money out of the people who can pay, which is causing them to not be able to pay, which is going to cause them to require public assistance, and we're in an unsustainable, vicious cycle.
That's all it is, and because how long can they continue paying for it? You know, if you continue, you're paying all these taxes, so now you're going to pay for more health care, and you get to a point to where I can't put food on my table because I'm paying for someone else's free health care. So then, okay, I have to cut back. Maybe I have $150 or $300 deductible on my medical. Or you have that, whatever I believe they call it, the donut, where you have so many things that you can do, and then suddenly you reach a point that, okay, you can't go to the doctor right now because you're outside of the donut.
Okay. Just wrapping up then, your district has typically been skewed heavily Democrat, usually. Well, in your primary election, it appeared it was split 65-35 between the two Democrat candidates and the Republican candidate. And I know that in prior years, it's been even more than that. It's been closer to 80-20.
Yes.
When you're out talking to people, do you believe the sentiment is changing? And if it is, how are you going to pull over enough independents and Democrats? What do you say to them about, we can't continue on this path? How do you pull them over to your side in order to change the direction that the state is going?
The saying of, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Most people I'm finding out, even Democrats, are saying, no, I'm not, because I can't afford to do this, this, and this, which I used to be able to do before. California has been a trifecta for 12 years, 13 years now. So every part of the government in the state of California is all Democrats. Even the Democrats have reached a point to where I'm finding more and more individuals who they're not going to become Republicans, but they're going to vote differently because they also don't like the cost of living here. And a lot of people don't want to leave. I don't want to leave here. I mean, I like where I live. It hasn't been a huge struggle because, and I have had people who just simply said to me, I'm a Democrat, I'm stuck in here, I have blinders on, no matter what goes on, I'm going to vote for Harris and Walsh. But it is changing. With my, with the opponent that I have, he's a career politician. He's 43 years old, he's been in since he was 18. He's been a mayor, he's been the commissioner of the education system, and in the city that he was directed for the education system, for instance, they're 46th nationwide. I mean, we have the illiteracy in California, we're #1 there also.
Yeah.
This individual, he has 126 endorsements. I looked it up.
Yeah. I notice generally when I go to all of the Democrats' websites, they all seem to co-endorse each other. That seems to be part of the strategy to get a mass effect and to make voters think that all of these people want them elected or reelected. What would you say to all of these endorsements?
Well, for instance, first thing, do you have children? Do you have grandchildren? 9 out of 10 people, well, yes, I do. Are you aware of the fact that this individual, the Democrat that you want to vote for, his endorsements are the people, number one, who the author of AB 1955 endorsed this individual? Are you aware that the sponsors endorse this people? I point out to them, these individuals are taking away your rights for your children, taxes, everything that is going downhill. They have been in control this whole time. Who are you going to blame?
There's a strong case to be made since California has been controlled by a Democrat supermajority since around 2014, 15.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite some time after Schwarzenegger came in, and well, whatever that was, 2012.
04, way back.
Yeah, way back then. So we've been into this for a very, very long time. And then, we look at the fact that as far as economically here in California, 2017 comes along, Brown turns around and says, okay, we're a sanctuary state. That's a big thing for me. I want to end the sanctuary status of the state of California. Yeah. We can't afford it. There was no vote on it. If you're going to turn a state into a sanctuary state, you leave that up to the voters. I'm a huge believer in explain it to the people. This is the pros, this is the cons. You're the voter. You decide we go this way or we go that way. So that's basically what I try to explain to everyone. This is up to you. Do you want to continue down this road that you progressively see going downhill, or do you want to try to turn this around where we can gradually, and it's not going to happen overnight, where we can gradually start coming back to where we have a viability. California imports everything. We were an exporter. We import $550 billion a year. We were an exporter of oil, crude oil and so on, coming in. We now bring in 73% of all of our oil comes from outside. And it's all about, well, it's bad for the environment because the pumps are going up and down. I've even had people tell me, well, they're ugly.
Yeah.
Okay, they're ugly, so we'll paint stars and stripes on them.
Yeah, we have to bring it in from somewhere.
They have to.
So why not here? It'll actually, since it's local, actually be better for the environment overall.
Right. Well, LA County did this. They shut down all of the pumpers.
Yeah.
And that was a vote by LA County board to shut them all down.
I appreciate your time here this afternoon. I also appreciate that you have spent all of the time going through all of these bills coming out of Sacramento line by line and trying to elucidate your positions on them so that voters know not only what they're doing, but where you stand on them. And it's clear that you disagree with much of the legislation that is coming out of Sacramento.
I do.
And you would offer a clear alternate choice to the voters in your district.
Yeah, I leave it to the voters.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. God
Thank
bless.
you.
I appreciate it.